Most people look at digital automation and assume it is just invisible magic happening seamlessly in the cloud, completely oblivious to the brutal, physical toll that endless data processing takes on the bare metal hardware keeping their business alive. My name is Maya, and as a lead infrastructure automation engineer, my job wasn't just writing basic code. I orchestrated a massive, local automation ecosystem for a high-volume data processing firm. I managed tens of thousands of simultaneous requests using a highly complex architecture, isolating processes within strict Docker containers, designing intricate logical workflows with N8N, and managing heavy transaction loads through the Evolution API integrated seamlessly with custom Python scripts. Operating this entire infrastructure directly from the Linux terminal on my ruggedized Chromebook, I had to balance an incredibly delicate ecosystem. When you are processing that much raw data on local, on-premise hardware, you aren't just managing information, you are managing electricity, friction, and extreme heat. Physical servers have strict, undeniable thermal thresholds. The rate limits I coded into the APIs and the strict memory allocations on the Docker containers weren't there to artificially slow down the company's output, they were critical safety valves. They were designed to prevent the CPUs from locking at 100% capacity and generating more heat than the local server room's cooling systems could physically extract. But the greatest threat to a multi-million-dollar data center isn't a power surge or a cyber attack. It is an arrogant director of operations who fundamentally believes that hardware thermal limits are just cowardly software suggestions standing in the way of his infinite scale. Keep watching, hit that subscribe button, and welcome back to Scars and Silk. Today, I am going to show you exactly what happens when a toxic executive forces you to violently uncap your servers, and you simply step back and let the relentless, unregulated heat of a million data requests burn his entire physical operation to the ground. The absolute disruption to our carefully balanced digital ecosystem began the exact moment corporate brought in Victor as the new director of operations, a man who possessed absolutely zero understanding of system architecture and evaluated every single piece of technology purely through the lens of transaction volume. Victor wasn't an engineer. He was a ruthless, numbers-obsessed executive whose entire bonus structure was heavily tied to maximizing the sheer quantity of data our local servers could process and sell on a daily basis. When he first audited the main performance dashboard, he completely ignored the critical temperature gauges and the safe operational thresholds of our physical hardware, immediately fixating instead on the intentional, meticulously programmed pauses within my N8N workflows and the strict RAM allocation limits I had set on our Docker containers. To an experienced infrastructure engineer, those rate limits and scheduled micro-delays were the essential life support systems keeping our massive on-premise server racks from instantly overheating. But to Victor's mathematically illiterate, profit-driven mind, they were nothing more than unacceptable, cowardly bottlenecks that were actively stealing potential revenue from the company. He fundamentally could not comprehend why I couldn't simply access the Linux terminal, rewrite the Python scripts, and force the Evolution API to process every single data request simultaneously without any restrictions. Instead of authorizing the massive budget required to safely migrate our heavy processing loads to a decentralized, dynamically scaling cloud environment, he looked at my perfectly optimized local automation system and arrogantly decided that my strict adherence to safe CPU thresholds was just an excuse for not pushing the bare metal hardware to its absolute, raw limits. Victor officially summoned me into his glass-walled office and handed down his absolute, non-negotiable mandate. He demanded that I immediately open my terminal, rewrite our core Python automation scripts, and completely strip away every single rate limit restricting the Evolution API. He aggressively ordered me to unlock the resource constraints on our entire local infrastructure, forcefully demanding that I allocate 100% of the CPU and RAM capacity to all of our Docker containers simultaneously so the system could process an infinite, unregulated stream of incoming data. I calmly stood my ground and tried to explain the completely unforgiving reality of physical server architecture to a man whose entire technical vocabulary consisted of corporate buzzwords and sales metrics. I explicitly warned him that forcing our on-premise hardware to run at absolute maximum capacity without any scheduled N8N delays wouldn't magically scale our operations. It would instantly trigger a massive internal DDoS attack, flooding the bare metal servers with more simultaneous execution commands than they could mathematically handle. I went even further, detailing exactly how forcefully pushing the CPUs to 100% utilization on a continuous, unbroken loop would generate catastrophic levels of extreme heat that our local server room's standard cooling systems were physically incapable of extracting. Victor simply scoffed at my technical warnings, aggressively accused me of being a rigid, uncooperative engineer who was deliberately bottlenecking the company's daily revenue just to protect my overly cautious architecture, and gave me a direct, undeniable ultimatum to completely remove the software safety locks and aggressively uncap the machines before the end of my shift. I completely refused to waste my breath debating thermal dynamics and hardware lifecycle management with a director who prioritized short-term transaction volume over the survival of our physical facility. Instead, I calmly opened my laptop, brought up a blank document, and meticulously drafted a formal infrastructure overload and hardware destruction risk acknowledgment. I used explicit, technical language to document exactly what would happen when we bypassed the system's rate limits and RAM constraints, clearly stating that forcing the bare metal servers to sustain 100% CPU utilization on a continuous loop would guarantee a catastrophic thermal CPU cascade failure and create an immediate, high-probability risk of physical combustion within our local server racks. I printed the document out, walked it directly into Victor's glass-walled office, and calmly informed him that I would not execute the reckless system override script unless he formally signed his name, legally assuming absolute financial and operational responsibility for the mathematically guaranteed destruction of our on-premise data center. Victor actually sneered at my caution, aggressively snatched the pen out of my hand, and called me a timid, alarmist engineer who was treating enterprise-grade hardware like a fragile desk toy. He arrogantly signed his name at the bottom of the page, fully convinced he was about to mastermind a record-breaking processing day, and aggressively ordered me to execute the bypass immediately. So, I walked back to my desk, completely disabled the rate limits on the Evolution API, removed all resource constraints from our Docker containers, and aggressively pushed his doomed, uncapped parameters directly into our main automation cluster. I want to pause the story right here to talk to every brilliant female engineer managing heavy-duty local infrastructure. Have you ever had a toxic executive force you to push your server hardware past the point of physical failure? Go down to the comments right now and drop a server rack desktop computer or a fire engine emoji if you know the absolute best defense against corporate greed is getting their reckless mandates signed in permanent ink. And make sure you hit that subscribe button to join the Scars and Silk network, because you absolutely need to see exactly what happens when the unyielding laws of thermodynamics finally catch up to his uncapped data volume. Back to the story. Victor got his reckless processing mandate, the executive board praised his aggressive new efficiency strategy, and I sat back at my terminal, fully aware that I had just removed the only thing standing between our main data center and a total, absolute inferno. I calmly logged into the central automation cluster, deliberately bypassed the carefully configured resource constraints, and ruthlessly executed the master script that instantly stripped away the safety protocols from our entire Docker ecosystem. For the first few agonizing minutes, the massive, unchecked surge in transaction volume actually seemed like a triumph. As the performance dashboards in Victor's office lit up with skyrocketing data rates and Victor himself began aggressively celebrating our newfound processing efficiency to anyone who would listen. But while he was busy obsessively watching the transaction count climb, an invisible, physically unavoidable disaster was rapidly unfolding within the cold aisle of our server room. Because the new configuration had explicitly commanded the Docker containers to ignore all resource limits and allowed the Evolution API to flood the system with simultaneous requests, the on-premise hardware was no longer performing complex logical tasks in an orderly queue. Instead, it was violently locking every single available CPU thread into a constant, high-intensity processing state. The massive, unregulated demand for computational power instantly obliterated our carefully maintained cooling efficiency, flooding the server racks with a wall of intense, localized heat. While Victor's digital dashboard falsely displayed a record-breaking processing speed down in the physical server room, the processors were beginning to hit critical thermal temperatures, desperately struggling to handle a load they were never built to endure, as the unforgiving laws of thermodynamics quietly prepared to completely incinerate his entire uncapped, optimized data center. The inevitable infrastructural disaster struck exactly as the laws of thermodynamics dictated, turning our main server room into an absolute hellscape. Millions of simultaneous data requests slammed into our bare metal hardware without any rate-limited buffer, forcing every single CPU thread into an unceasing, high-intensity state that generated an exponential, unsustainable wall of heat. The server room's precision cooling system, which was meticulously rated for standard operational loads, was utterly overwhelmed within minutes. The ambient air temperature inside the rack skyrocketed, pushing the hardware far beyond its safety thresholds. Because I had been forced to remove all software-level thermal throttling as part of Victor's reckless, infinite-scale mandate, the processors could not digitally self-protect, leading to a catastrophic cascade failure. One by one, the mainboard voltage regulators began to fail, physically scorching the boards, while the intense heat caused the high-density memory modules to warp. Alarm sirens blared through the office, and thick, acrid plumes of white smoke, the unmistakable scent of burning silicon and melting plastic, poured into the hallways as multiple server units suffered total, non-recoverable physical combustion. In less than an hour, Victor's arrogant, record-breaking data processing operation had been completely reduced to a smoldering, lifeless ruin of incinerated racks and melted copper, effectively wiping out the company's entire local data infrastructure in one brutal, self-inflicted inferno. With the entire company's data operations completely crippled and the executive board in a state of absolute, blind panic, Victor desperately tried to save his career by screaming to the emergency response team that a sudden, massive cyber attack had targeted our servers. I completely ignored his frantic, pathetic attempts to lie, bypassed him entirely, and marched straight into the emergency boardroom meeting that had just been convened with the terrified senior partners. I didn't utter a single defensive word. I simply connected my laptop to the main projector and illuminated the high-definition scan of the infrastructure overload and hardware destruction risk acknowledgement that Victor had arrogantly signed just hours earlier. The massive screen perfectly highlighted his signature directly beneath the explicit, non-negotiable clauses detailing his absolute, written orders to force the CPUs to 100% utilization, bypass the rate limits, and ignore the thermal safety protocols, the very actions that directly caused the physical combustion of our data center. It completely shattered his desperate narrative about a phantom cyber attack, exposing the undeniable, signed proof that his blind, arrogant obsession with maximizing transaction volume at any cost had intentionally triggered the massive hardware disaster. The entire executive boardroom went deathly silent as the reality of his gross operational negligence and direct responsibility for the millions in destroyed assets washed over the senior partners. Before the CEO could even fully process the devastating document, I calmly slid my company badge and a formal letter of resignation across the massive table, announcing that I was leaving the company effective immediately to launch my own elite infrastructure consulting firm. However, because their entire data processing operation was now a smoldering pile of scrap metal, and they were losing millions by the minute, I handed the senior partners a non-negotiable proposal for a $2 million emergency consulting fee to immediately migrate their remaining assets to a secure, decentralized cloud architecture and oversee the entire reconstruction of their infrastructure. Victor was instantly terminated for cause, publicly escorted out of the building by corporate security, and the partners authorized my exorbitant consulting fee on the spot. I spent the following year building the exact, scalable cloud-based architecture I had explicitly recommended before he tried to burn our local data center to the ground, entirely on my own terms, and at exponentially more than my original salary. To every brilliant woman engineering the massive digital backbone of the modern world, your true power isn't just in writing efficient code, it is in knowing exactly when to step back and let an arrogant executive literally torch his own career path. If you know your worth in the world of high-volume infrastructure, go down to the comments right now and drop a server rack desktop computer or a fire engine emoji so I know you are watching. And make sure you hit that subscribe button to join the Scars and Silk Empire. Protect your hardware integrity, get every single catastrophic processing mandate in writing, and never rebuild a melted data center for free.